Hello mga ka-info! Let us differentiate moral standards and non-moral standards. What is morality? What are non-moral standards? And what is the difference between moral standards and non-moral standards? These and many more we will discuss in this video. Morality refers to principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong or good and bad behavior. Moral standards involve the rules about the kinds of actions people believe are morally right and wrong, as well as the values they place on the kinds of objects they believe are morally good and morally bad. Some ethicists equate moral standards with moral values and moral principles. On the other hand, non-moral standards refer to rules that are unrelated to moral considerations. They are not linked to morality or by nature lack ethical sense. Basic examples of non-moral standards include rules of etiquette, fashion standards, rules in games, and various house rules. Technically, religious rules, some traditions, and legal statutes like laws and ordinances are non-moral principles. But they can be ethically relevant depending on some factors and contexts. Philosophy professor and textbook author Jensen Manyebog mentions 6 characteristics of moral standards that further differentiate them from non-moral standards. So moral standards can be distinguished from non-moral standards using the following characteristics he discusses in his books and lectures. Number 1. Moral standards are not merely established by authority figures. They are not mere invention even of authoritative bodies or persons such as nations' legislative bodies, although they must be considered in the process of making laws. Hence, moral standards cannot be changed nor nullified by the decisions of particular authoritative body. One thing about these standards nonetheless is that its validity lies on the soundness or adequacy of the reasons that are considered to support and justify them. Number 2. Moral standards have the trait of universalizability. It means that everyone should live up to moral standards. It means that moral principles must apply to all who are in the relevantly similar situation. If one judges that Act A is morally right for a certain person P, then it is morally right for anybody relevantly similar to P. This characteristic is exemplified in the Gold Rule: do unto others what you would them do unto you, if you were in their shoes. And in the formal principle of justice, which states that it cannot be right for A to treat B in a manner in which it would be wrong for B to treat A, merely on the ground that they are two different individuals, and without there being any difference between the natures or circumstances of the two, which can be stated as a reasonable ground for difference of treatment. This principle is also an extension of the principle of consistency. That is, one ought to be consistent about one's value judgments. Number 3. Moral standards are based on impartial considerations. Moral standard does not evaluate standards on the basis of the interests of a certain person or group, but one that goes beyond personal interests to a universal standpoint, in which each person's interests are impartially counted as equal. Impartiality is usually depicted as being free of bias or prejudice. Impartiality in morality requires that we give equal and adequate consideration to the interests of all concerned parties. Number 4. Moral standards are associated with special emotions and vocabulary. Moral standards have practical or action-guiding nature. Moral standards are generally put forth as injunction or imperatives, such as do not kill, do no unnecessary harm, and love your neighbor. Moral principles are used to advise and to influence one's actions. Retroactively, moral principles are used to evaluate one's behavior, to assign praise and blame, and to produce feelings of satisfaction or of guilt. If a person violates a moral standard, like by telling a lie even to fulfill a special purpose, it is not surprising if he or she starts feeling guilty or being ashamed of his behavior afterwards. Notice that on the contrary, no much guilt is felt if one goes against the current fashion trend, like refusing to wear tattered jeans. Indeed, moral standards are associated with special emotions. That's all for now for this video. Till next time mga ka-info! Remember, we learned this from My Info Basket.
Don't forget to subscribe before commenting.